The denial of a slice of pumpkin pie was the final, quiet punctuation on a sentence that had been written for years. On Thanksgiving, my mother told my 5-year-old daughter, no pie. There wasn't even a pretense of a thank you for the meal. At the same table, my sister Beverly's boys each received 2 generous slices. I simply smiled. I helped my daughter into her coat, and we left. At 9:10 that night, my father's text blinked onto my screen. Don't forget to send the payment tomorrow. I didn't get angry. I just recited the words aloud to the empty kitchen, and the universe seemed to freeze. But the true gut punch wasn't my mother's words. It was the look on my daughter's face in their aftermath, quiet, deeply confused, as if she had committed some grave, unknowable offense. That haunted gaze stayed with me for the rest of the day. My shame was not for myself, but for her. Shame for allowing the moment to unfold, for standing there in complicit silence as if this were normal, for leading her into a house that had long ago decided she was an outsider. She is only 5. She doesn't understand their calculus of favor and disapproval, but she feels its chill. And I felt a wave of disgust at my own placating smile, my cowardly commitment to a peace that was really just surrender. The truth, clear and sharp, was that I should have gathered us and left years ago. The day had begun with the usual strained theater. Forced smiles. Excessive autumn decor. Beverly's sons tore through the rooms like miniature tornadoes, their noise celebrated as high spirits. My mother fluttered in the kitchen, perfecting the gravy, cooing over the boys' colored shirts, her eyes sliding past me without landing. My daughter, clutching my hand, offered a soft hello. It was met with a glance, then absolute silence before my mother turned back to the stuffing. My father remained anchored to the couch, a football game blaring, a second beer already open. I performed our familiar routine, removing my daughter's shoes, tucking her puzzle bag at the table's edge, assembling the high chair we always bring. Yes, my mother remarked without looking up. The throne has returned. I said nothing. Dinner was a study in contrasts. Seated across from Beverly and her husband, I watched as my nephew's boisterous chatter was met with fond laughter. My daughter, after a whispered thank you to the room, received a kind smile from Beverly and nothing from anyone else. The food was fine. I'd prepared half of it myself. When my daughter, her plate nearly empty, asked politely for more mashed potatoes, my mother's voice cut through. Let's save some for the plate cleaners, she said, nodding toward the boys. My daughter's plate held only 2 forlorn bites of turkey. Beverly's expression tightened, but she held her tongue. I felt a small, tentative tug on my sleeve. Then came the pageantry of dessert. My mother, with the flourish of a game show host, declared, pie only for those who said thank you. It was meant as a joke, but a chill settled in my bones. Beverly's boys were served double portions, crowned with whipped cream and ice cream. My daughter watched, waiting her turn, likely believing it went by age or some other fair rule. When the moment came, my mother looked from my daughter's hopeful face to mine. Her verdict was flat. She didn't thank me for dinner. Beverly's head snapped up, her fork clattering to her plate. She did. I heard her. My mother was already turning toward the kitchen. Well, I didn't. Maybe next time she'll speak up. The silence that followed was absolute and complicit. Not a word from my father, not a murmur from Beverly's husband. My daughter just took a small step backward, her eyes wide and glassy. I bent down, meeting her at her level, and zipped her coat with deliberate calm. We said goodbye only to Beverly, whose face was a storm of apology and fury. Then we left, the heavy door shutting behind us on the suffocating warmth of the house. The drive home was a blur of darkened road and the effort to keep my tears in check. From the back seat, I heard the shift in my daughter's breathing in the rearview mirror. She was awake, quiet, trying to solve a puzzle with pieces she did not possess. Why? What did I do wrong? And in the echoing silence of our own home, my father's text arrived, a stark reminder that in their eyes, my primary role was not daughter or mother, but a financial utility. A bill payer. The pie was just a symbol. The transaction was the point. As I spoke his words into the night, I knew the cost of my compliance had finally become too high. The bill now was coming due. The text from my father glowed in the dark. Don't forget to send the payment tomorrow. It arrived at 9:10 p.m., a stark digital bookmark in a day of quiet devastation. As if the afternoon had never happened. As if I were not a daughter who had just been gutted, but a faulty appliance, an ATM that also, inconveniently, came with a child he couldn't acknowledge. I didn't rage. I didn't reply. I let the silence of the night absorb his words. The next morning, with a clarity that felt both terrifying and calm, I opened the family group chat and typed a single, declarative sentence: "From now on, pay your own bills." I could feel the freeze on the other end of the line. But the true power wasn't in my father's shock, it was in the silence that followed. For nearly 4 hours, the chat remained dormant. This was unprecedented. Any prior hint of financial shift had triggered an immediate, distrustful volley from him, treating me not as family, but as a negligent employee. Now, there was only the mute, mocking testimony of 2 blue checkmarks. Read. Leaving the phone face down on the counter, I turned to make my daughter lunch. She was at the table, a crayon clutched in her fist, drawing. I looked over her shoulder. It was our house. 3 stick figures. Her, me, our cat. No sprawling family tree, no grandparents, no cousins. Just us. A core. The simplicity of it was a dagger to the heart. She was already, instinctively, editing her universe down to its safest, most truthful elements. At noon, a vibration. A text from Beverly, "You okay?" 2 words that held an ocean of understanding. She always sensed the tectonic plates shifting. I didn't reply immediately. How could I explain the sediment of disappointment settling within me? Disappointment in them, yes, but a deeper, more corrosive disappointment in myself for having expected, yet again, a different outcome. Then, at 12:43 p.m., my father's baffled rupture of the silence. Wait, what is that even supposed to mean? A dry, humorless laugh caught in my throat. He knew. He simply could not compute the data. For years, I had been the silent underwriter of their comfort. Cell phones, insurance premiums, my mother's streaming subscriptions. It began after my divorce, a gesture I'd mistaken for a lifeline, a way to maintain a bond. Instead, I became the family's unthanked comptroller. When my daughter was born, the courtesy they extended lasted a lunar cycle. Then, the comments began. My mother's observation that she was all her father, a passive-aggressive epitaph for my failed marriage. My father's silence, which was not neutrality but a loud, resonant judgment. They looked at my bright, gentle girl and saw only a monument to my poor choice, a walking reminder of a man who'd let them down. My fault, by association. So, to his feigned confusion, I replied with a second, clarifying sentence. I won't be paying for anything anymore. No bills. No extras. Budget for yourselves. I placed the phone back on the counter. Within 10 minutes, it lit up like a panic room, screen flashing with incoming calls. I let them all go to voicemail. The last time I'd tried to articulate a hurt, I was pathologized. My mother called me too emotional. My father suggested I seek professional help for my oversensitivity. Then, my mother's contribution sliced into the chat, very dignified to make a scene over pie. I stared at the words. They were so perfectly, venomously dismissive. They revealed the entire fracture. She truly believed this was about dessert. She could not, or would not, see that it was about the deliberate, public humiliation of a 5-year-old child to reinforce her own dominance. The pie was just the weapon. Needing an ally, or perhaps just a witness, I texted Beverly privately. I'm done. For real this time. Her reply was instantaneous. Okay, me too. The world tilted. Beverly, the perennial diplomat, the interpreter of our parents' difficult love, the bridge builder? Her quiet solidarity was more seismic than my father's sputtering calls. What do you mean? I typed back, my fingers unsteady. Her response was a lifeline and a mystery. Come to ours for dinner next weekend. Bring daughter. I'll explain. The cryptic nature was unlike her. But in it, I felt a profound shift, a door opening in a wall I'd thought was permanent. Maybe she hadn't just seen the incident. Maybe she'd finally seen the pattern. And maybe, just maybe, she was as weary of playing her assigned role as I was of playing mine. The first test came 2 days later. A Venmo request from my mother for $50, tagged utilities. The note read, "Maybe this will refresh your memory." I declined it within seconds, my thumb tapping the button with a finality that echoed in my bones. The reaction was swift. 10 minutes later, my father's call. I let it go to voicemail. His message was all tight-jawed irritation, the tone of a manager addressing an insubordinate. "We had an arrangement, Amanda. You can't just shirk your responsibilities over some emotional nonsense." The word responsibilities became a cold, heavy stone in my stomach. It laid bare their entire worldview. My duty was to fund, to facilitate, and to silently endure. For years, I'd accepted that duty as penance for my divorce, for my different life, for my daughter's very existence. No more. That night, as I tucked my daughter in, her question was a soft punch to the heart. "Mom, did I do something wrong at Grandma's?" I smoothed her hair and gave her the truth I could manage. "No, sweetheart. Grandma just sometimes forgets how to be kind." She accepted this with a small, trusting smile. It was enough for her for now. But I knew the lull was temporary. My refusal to pay was a declaration of independence, and empires don't relinquish subjects quietly. When they realized I wouldn't crawl back to fix the rupture, their tactics shifted from passive neglect to active aggression. Then, Beverly made her move, changing the entire game. For 3 days, an unnerving silence descended. No calls, no financial requests, no texts. It wasn't peace, it was the dense, pressurized quiet before a storm. On the 4th morning, the skies broke open. My mother posted one of her signature martyrdom by Facebook statuses. Funny how some daughters forget who sacrificed everything for them. Family is loyalty, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. But I guess feelings trump morality these days. It was vague, poisonous, and perfectly curated for her audience. 12 supportive likes, 3 hand-wringing comments, and a silence that dared me to engage. I didn't take the bait. I simply took a screenshot and sent it to Beverly. Her reply was succinct: "Mom is losing it." The next salvo was more direct. "A fraud alert from Amazon, except it wasn't fraud. It was a purchase. Towels, slippers, a rose gold diffuser. Charged to an old account, one still logged into my mother's tablet from my post-divorce stay." She knew the card on file was mine. This was a probe, an assumption that the old mechanisms would still engage, that I would see the alert and simply pay, as I always had. This time, I dismantled the machine. I canceled the order, locked the account, and spent an hour changing passwords, severing digital lifelines. The response was immediate. A missed call from my father, then a text: "You're only making this harder than it needs to be." I stared at the words, marveling at the sheer, unvarnished entitlement. I was a recalcitrant subordinate, complicating a simple, long-standing directive. I didn't reply. The line was drawn. That weekend, my daughter and I drove to Beverly's. The contrast was a bomb. My girl bounced in her car seat, chattering about her cousins. I'd told her only that we were having a fun visit. I needed the sanctuary as much as she did. We were greeted not as obligations, but as beloved arrivals. Beverly's boys erupted from the house in a joyful, pajama-clad mob, welcoming my daughter into their fold with roaring enthusiasm. Her husband pressed a warm mug of cider into my hands before my coat was off. The air was rich with the scent of garlic bread and roasting vegetables, a warmth that seeped into the soul. This house didn't just look like a family, it felt like one. It was a living counterpoint to everything we had just left behind, and for the first time in weeks, I felt my shoulders begin to unbend from my ears. We were on safe ground. The kitchen was warm, the clutter of dinner plates a comforting mess. Once the kids had disappeared into the glow of a movie, Beverly let out a long breath, leaned back in her chair, and said, "I'm done, too." I blinked, assuming she meant the meal or the long week, but her steady gaze told a different story. She meant our parents. The confession, when it came, was quiet and revolutionary. Beverly spoke of a lifetime spent as the golden child, a role that required constant translation of our mother's passive aggression, the buffering of our father's cold silence. and the exhausting diplomacy of pretending the family's uneven economy of love was normal. I always felt the difference, she admitted, her voice soft. Even when we were little. I just didn't know what to do with it. I thought if I could just be perfect for them, it would take the pressure off you. That was the blow that landed deepest. There was no triumph in her tone, only a profound and weary sadness. What changed? I asked, though I already knew. Thanksgiving, she said, the word heavy. The way Mom looked at her. Like she was static. A problem. She's 5. She did say thank you. I heard her. And Mom chose not to, because acknowledging her would mess up the story she tells herself about how this family works. Beverly's lines were now drawn. The weekly check-in calls were canceled. The boys wouldn't be going over. She was stepping off the diplomatic tightrope. Later, as we sat surrounded by the soft sounds of sleeping children tangled in blankets, Beverly proposed her plan. One dinner. At her house. Our parents, us, and the kids. A final, controlled confrontation. A last chance for them to see what's standing right in front of them, she said. I was silent, neither accepting nor refusing. My cynicism was a thick armor. I didn't believe in last-chance miracles. As I gathered our things to leave, she clarified her mission. I'm not asking you to forgive them. I just want them to see what they're losing. That phrase, what they're losing, echoed in my mind like a tolling bell. 2 days later, the battlefront shifted to my workplace. My father appeared, a grim silhouette pacing on the sidewalk. A coworker nudged me, noting the man outside who seemed to be staring at the door like it was a test. I went out. He stopped his pacing, his face a mask of strained authority. No greeting. No apology. Just a flat, paternal pronouncement. This has gone far enough. We're your parents. The clarity I felt was icy. I met his eyes, my voice steady. You don't treat me or my daughter like family. You treat us like a punishment. He absorbed the words as if they were physical. For a moment, he just stood there, struck mute, before turning and walking away without another sound. I didn't tell my daughter. That evening, we had cocoa and a movie night. She chose a film about a sprawling, messy family that finds harmony by the final scene. I let her believe in that narrative for now. But the real script was still being written. Beverly's dinner loomed on the calendar. And for the first time, with my sister standing beside me instead of between us, I understood. We were no longer the subjects of the test. We were the administrators. They were the ones who would have to prove their worth. Beverly approached the dinner with the strategic focus of a peace negotiator. The menu she sent was a testament to hope. Roast chicken, garlic roasted potatoes, her husband's legendary baked mac and cheese, comfort food meant to disarm. When she mentioned she'd asked our mother to bring dessert, I was stunned. You invited them? I typed. Yes, she replied. They don't know the real reason. I said it was just a quiet family night. Nothing special. You think they'll come? They never miss a chance to pretend everything's fine. Saturday arrived. My daughter chose the birthday dress from Beverly, the beautiful one my mother had once pointedly ignored. She twirled, delighted by its swish, blissfully unaware of who would be at the table. I couldn't bring myself to tell her. I refused to let her preemptively shrink, to practice being lovable for an audience that had already decided she wasn't. We arrived early to the comforting chaos of cousins. Beverly's house was a sanctuary of good smells, rosemary, roasting cheese, warmth that felt genuine. For a fleeting moment, it was possible to believe in a normal evening. At 6:12, the atmosphere shifted. My father entered first, a man braced for a chore. Then my mother, her arms cradling the inevitable pumpkin pie like a ceremonial shield. Her glance toward me was fleeting, dismissive. Her greeting to my daughter was a stranger's gesture, a curt nod, a smile that never reached her eyes. Dinner commenced under a banner of brutal civility. Small talk about traffic and the weather. Beverly's husband poured wine. My father's laugh boomed at an innocuous comment, a sound too loud and hollow. My mother praised the quality of the napkins. Every interaction was meticulously superficial, the tension beneath the tablecloth pulled tighter with every passing minute. Then, halfway through the meal, Beverly set down her glass. The soft clink was a gunshot in the quiet room. She didn't preface or soften it. "I think we need to talk about Thanksgiving." My mother's fork halted midair. "What about it?" Beverly didn't blink. "About how you humiliated Amanda's daughter over a piece of pie. And how you've been treating her for years." The fork clattered to the plate. My father's chair creaked as he leaned back, adopting the posture of a man under siege. "I don't think now is the time or place for—" "Mom, it's past time," Beverly interrupted, her voice even and solid. "You're in my house. I invited you so you would finally listen." I watched the blood drain from my father's face. This was a new Beverly, one who didn't translate, but stated. One who didn't buffer, but exposed. "You act like Amanda owes you everything," she continued, her gaze locking on our mother. "And you treat her daughter like she's a stain on the family. It's disgusting." My mother produced a short, derisive laugh. "Oh, come on. That's not fair." "Then tell me what is fair," Beverly fired back, her calmness more devastating than any shout. "Ignoring her? Publicly shaming a 5-year-old? Acting like you're still owed for 2 decades of parenting that ended years ago?" A profound silence swallowed the room. My daughter looked up from her plate, her eyes wide and questioning. I gave a small, reassuring nod. "Keep eating. You are safe here." My father found his voice a low rumble of grievance. "You don't understand how hard it was for us. We did the best we could." "No," Beverly said, the word final. "You did what you wanted. That's not the same thing." She then turned to me, her expression softening marginally. "You don't have to say anything. I invited them because I needed to say this. But I did speak." I looked directly at my mother, at the woman who had wielded a pumpkin pie as a weapon of exclusion. "When you refused her that pie," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "you weren't punishing her. You were punishing me. For building a life without the man who left, and for refusing to be ashamed of it." Then came the quietest, most devastating voice of all. My daughter, her small face serious, looked across the table at my mother and stated a simple, gut-wrenching truth. "I don't think you like me." It was not an accusation, merely an observation. My mother recoiled as if physically struck, her mouth opening and closing, no sound emerging. Into the aftermath, Beverly's husband, who had been a silent, steady presence all night, laid down his fork with deliberate care. His voice was calm, terminally final. "We're not doing this anymore. Either you're part of this family or you're guests. We're done inviting you." The sentence hung in the air, a judgment that required no discussion. The meal was over. Within minutes, our parents gathered their things and left without a word, no farewells, no touches, no offers of the pie they had brought. They took their dessert and their delusions with them. Later, amid the steam and suds of washing dishes, Beverly looked exhausted but unburdened, her eyes clear for the first time in years. "I don't know if they'll ever come back from that," she murmured, more to herself than to me. I handed her a rinsed plate, my own heart a strange mix of scarred and light. "I don't care," I said. And for the first time, I truly meant it. A week of silence passed, the kind that felt permanent. Then, something happened that dismantled every assumption I held. They came to my door. Together. The doorbell chimed, a single, tentative note. I almost ignored it, expecting a parcel or a solicitor. But a glance through the window revealed 2 figures, statuesque and solemn on the porch. My parents. I opened the door, my body rigid with surprise. My father stood in his formal wool coat, the one reserved for funerals and weddings. My mother cradled a gift wrapped in pink paper. The work was haphazard, with uneven seams and a clumsily knotted bow. She had wrapped it herself, a skill grown rusty from disuse. They offered no greeting, simply waited, their expressions naked with a vulnerability I had never seen. Wordlessly, I stepped back. They filed in, their eyes taking in the living room as if it were unfamiliar territory, cataloging the evidence of our lives without them. My daughter was on the rug, surrounded by a galaxy of crayons, a cartoon playing softly. She turned at the sound, her gaze traveling from the visitors, to the pink package to my face. She held perfectly still. Then, my father did the unimaginable. He lowered himself to his knees. Not on one knee, but both, settling onto the floor with a gravity that stilled the air. I thought he might be reaching for something or attempting to meet her at eye level. But he remained there, his posture one of profound surrender, his eyes finding mine. "I don't deserve to be here," he began, his voice scraped raw. But I had to say I'm sorry. Out loud. In person. My mother, her hands trembling slightly, placed the pink box on the coffee table. She looked at my daughter, then at me, her usual shield of composure gone. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she whispered. "Teaching her about manners, about respect. But now I see. I see what I did. What we did." She seemed smaller, older, the lines on her face etched with a new awareness. My daughter remained on the floor, a quiet observer. My father turned his kneeling frame toward her. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said, each word deliberate. "Ever. You were never the problem." His eyes returned to me, heavy with shame. "We were the problem. We still are. And I finally see that." There were no elaborate justifications, no rehearsed monologues. Just stark, costly admissions. My mother lifted the gift again, holding it out across the space between them. "I saw this last week. I don't know if you'll like it," she said, directly to my daughter. "But I thought of you. For the first time, I really thought of you." After a silent check-in with me, my daughter rose and approached. She accepted the box, returned to her spot, and carefully opened it. Nestled inside was a white music box, adorned with a ballerina, gold filigree, and painted roses. She turned the tiny key. A soft, tinkling melody filled the room as the dancer began a slow, slightly jerky pirouette. My daughter watched, utterly captivated, before breathing a whisper into the air. "Thank you." At that sound, my mother's composure fractured. Tears welled and spilled over. She made no move to hide them. My father was still kneeling. I walked to him. "You don't have to stay like that," I said. "But if you're only here to absolve yourselves, you should leave." He looked up, his eyes clear. "I'm here because I want you to know. I believe you now. I believe everything you've ever said." I accepted this with a single nod. Their visit lasted only minutes longer. They spoke in soft, simple phrases, making no demands, attempting no grand repair. As they prepared to leave, my mother bent to my daughter's level. "I want to learn to be better," she said, her voice thick. "You don't have to believe me yet, but I'll show you." My daughter stayed still, allowing the faint, fleeting touch of my mother's hand on her back before it was gone. The house settled into a deep quiet after the door closed. My daughter wound the music box again and again, the ballerina spinning her fragile hope. "They were different," she remarked, not looking up. Yes, I agreed. They were. She finally glanced at me, a question in her eyes. "Is it okay if I like the music?" My heart cracked open. "Sweetheart, it is always okay to like what you like." That night, she fell asleep on the couch, one hand curled near the music box as its melody played on. Watching her, I allowed a forbidden thought to surface from the depths where I'd buried it. This might not be an ending. This fragile, painful honesty might be the only way a true beginning can ever start. The morning after their visit dawned with a different quality of quiet. It wasn't the tense silence of withheld words, but a peaceful lull, as if the house itself was exhaling a breath it had held for years. My daughter woke with the music box cradled to her chest, her hair a sleepy halo. Her first words were a soft murmur into the stillness. "Do you think she meant it?" I knew exactly who she was. "I think she's trying," I said. My daughter considered this, then nodded, pulling her blanket up with a small, satisfied sigh. It was enough. The following days unfolded without incident, no calls, no unannounced appearances, no loaded texts. But this new silence wasn't a weapon. It felt deliberate, a space for reflection, as if for the first time, everyone was weighing their words before letting them loose into the world. On Wednesday, a small, unmarked box appeared on the doorstep. My mother's handwriting on the label was unmistakable. Inside, on a sheet of lined notebook paper, was a letter. It was not a neat, typed document, but a raw manuscript, ink-blotted words, sentences scratched out and rewritten, the very texture of painful thought. It did not ask for forgiveness. It did not justify. It simply admitted. She wrote of watching me struggle after the divorce and offering criticism instead of comfort. She confessed to allowing her bitterness toward my ex-husband to curdle into a resentment she directed at my daughter, a tiny, innocent proxy. She acknowledged that Thanksgiving was not an anomaly, but the cruelest flowering of a long-poisoned seed. One line carved itself into my memory. I thought being stern meant being strong. That not showing softness meant being a good mother. But all I taught you was to carry pain quietly, to not ask for help. And now I see you teaching your daughter something better, what I failed to give you. It ended not with a plea, but a promise. You don't have to trust us. We have to earn your trust. We have to change. I will try, even if it takes me the rest of my life. I sat on the couch for a long time, the paper resting in my hands. I didn't cry. I just let the staggering, imperfect honesty of it settle into the cracks of my anger. They were not perfect, but they were, finally, real. That weekend, Beverly's home was once again our sanctuary. Just our two families, making pizza, the kids flour-dusted and shrieking with laughter. It was the kind of effortless joy that leaves a quiet smile on your face long after you've left. As we sat at the table, Beverly filled our glasses and offered an observation. You know what's strange? I think they're actually scared now. I looked at her, curious. Not of us being angry, she clarified, but of losing something real. Me. You. Her. She held my gaze, her expression solemn. You saved us, you know. I shook my head, a reflexive dismissal, but she wouldn't allow it. You were the first to say enough. The first to stop pretending everything was okay. When you did that, you gave me permission to stop, too. Her words reframed my entire history. My lifelong feeling of being the broken one, the disappointment, suddenly seemed like the perspective of a prisoner. Perhaps I wasn't flawed. Perhaps I was just the first one to break the lock. On Sunday, I let my daughter choose our adventure. She picked the library. As we got ready, she asked, "Can I bring her?" She meant the music box. I said yes. She held it carefully on her lap during the drive, watching the ballerina spin to its gentle chime. Out of nowhere, she said, "I think Grandma likes me now." "I think she's just starting to learn how," I replied. My daughter nodded, her eyes still on the dancing figure. She's learning. Like I'm learning to tie my shoes. Her simplicity took my breath away. In that one sentence, she stripped away decades of drama and hurt. She saw not a villain or a saint, but a person fumbling with a new skill. It was a perspective of breathtaking, gentle grace. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. A photo from my mother. It was my father, sitting cross-legged on their living room floor, his reading glasses perched low on his nose. He was intently studying the scattered pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. The caption read, "He says he wants to teach her how to do the edges first." No question mark. No expectation. Just a statement. An offering. In that moment, the final piece of my own understanding clicked into place. The ultimate power had never lain in my ability to exile them. True strength was not in shutting the door, but in holding it open, not to the people they had been, but to the people they might choose to become. The real, quiet revolution was in showing them, clearly and without compromise, what unconditional love looked like, and then letting them stand there, in its revealing light, to decide for themselves if they were willing to change. The ball, as it always should have been, was finally in their court.